Hey, everybody. I have on the line with us a very special guest. Her name is Florencia Lozano. She has been on One Life to Live and Narcos, and now she's the star of a new movie called Life After You, which is taken off of the book called Life After You, What Your Death from Drugs Leaves Behind. And I know that, with all the stuff that is out there, we probably know somebody that's on drugs or somebody that has been affected by it, or a family. So I think this is extremely important to talk about, and I am so excited to talk to her about this movie. Welcome to the show, Florencia. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Emma. I'm doing well. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to talk about this film.
I think it's very important. Like I said, a lot of people, we're quick to judge when people, are on drugs, and it's easy to just make them sound like they're like nothing but a piece of trash. But what we don't
Yeah,
understand is those people need help. And it
yeah.
does affect the family, and it affects a lot of other people. So I think we need to look at it from a different perspective, and it looks like this movie is going to do that. So I'm really excited to get into it. But I know that everybody has a story, and I love to hear everybody's story. So please tell me how you got into acting. What were some of the things you had to overcome, and what do you love the most about it?
Oh gosh. I mean, acting really was like a way for me to exist. I found it much easier for me to put on a mask and express myself through someone else's words, because then I didn't have to be responsible for my anger or my sadness. It could be like, oh wow, you played that character well, when really I was exorcising my own emotions in a way that felt well, fun, exciting, and possible. I think as a girl, I felt very scared for a lot of reasons, and it was hard for me to show up and to use my voice. I didn't feel that connected to what was going on because my emotions felt really overwhelming. So the great thing about acting is you can put all of that, the more overwhelming the emotion is, usually the better it is in terms of using it for for to play a part.
Well, I think I remember you the most because One Life to Live was one of me and my mom's favorite soapies that we would watch, and it was something we always did together. And it was so one of my best times in my life. We would tape it so that way when I got home, she could watch it with me, and we just sat there and watched it. So I know your character pretty well. So tell everybody a little bit about the character you played there, because I know it unfortunately I miss it. I do miss that show a lot. But
Oh. I played tough as nails attorney Tea Delgato Manning. And I came on the show as the sort of, antagonist. Uh, she was a friend of Antonio Vega's, a Latina character who had been the daughter of a super. I lived on, Taya lived on Park Avenue South, but in the basement of an apartment. So there was always a feeling my character had of having to prove herself and having to be the best and having to never make a mistake, appear to be in control, and check all the boxes in terms of making a lot of money, being successful. And pretty soon after I got on, that facade started to slip because unwittingly I married Todd Manning for the money, and then started to fall in love with him. And so all of my vulnerability was exposed through that. So I went a little bit from being like the antagonist to being more of a character that people rooted for. But at the same time, there were people who didn't like me. There were people who did. I'm here for all of it. I enjoy playing characters that are not always easy to like, because they have flaws, like we humans tend to. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's what I think is so much fun is you can if I had to play a character for myself, it would be somebody that would love me and also hate me. I don't want to be somebody that's always hated, and I don't want to be like the goody goody either. So
right.
I think it's harder to probably play that because you got to try to balance both sides.
It was really fun to get to play a woman who was unapologetic, and she let her guard down when she was, especially with when Trevor played Todd, because we had a chemistry that was a little more playful. And when I first got on the show, I was playing with Roger, who's amazing. Our relationship was a little more tortured, and that was hard just because yeah, I was younger, and you have to learn how, as an actor, to have boundaries with your character. And with the soap, it's really challenging because you're playing that character day in, day out for so long that it can get it's easy to start to let that boundary get porous.
Yeah, I mean, is it hard to like shut off sometimes? Even like in this movie that you're playing now, was it hard sometimes to come home and shut that off, or did you kind of see some of these things just kind of start to take into your own personality?
I mean, it's gotten easier as I've gotten older to ground myself before, during, and after playing someone, um, to sort of come home to, if not a self, because really, what is a self? But um, to come home to my body, to come home to my breath, to come home to some sense of peace. Um, which really has to do with just accepting that, emotions come and go, thoughts come and go. We are fluid on so many levels. Um, but yeah, when I was younger, it was more difficult. And I've developed some rituals around it which help. Um, but I always learn something, and I from whatever character I play, and I feel like I take that with me. And that's such a gift of acting, to get to be someone else and say, well, actually, I want to be like that, so I'm going to incorporate that into me.
Yeah, especially like this role that you played here in this new movie that you have. Tell everybody a little bit about the plot, because I know it's a pretty intense movie.
So sadly, it's most of it is true. uh, in 2014, in February, Danny Latterman, Linda Latterman, and Tito Latterman's son died in his bedroom. He overdosed on a batch of heroin that was laced with fentanyl. And his parents found him. And about a month after that, um, his mother, not knowing what else to do, wrote a post on Facebook that went viral. And so she wrote her novel, Life After You, What Your Death from Drugs Leaves Behind, really to scare kids into, like, wake up. If you choose to do something risky, which unfortunately means, like, back in the day when I was a teenager, fentanyl wasn't a thing. Um, I mean, listen, opioids in and of themselves are a whole other class of drugs in terms of how addictive they are. But fentanyl, the stuff that they're putting in now, all kinds of drugs, that shit will kill you if you get enough of the dose, and so little of it. It takes so little of it to kill you that you're really kind of playing Russian roulette with your life now when you buy drugs on the street. So this movie was trying to address that and talk to kids about that risk. The movie also shows how each member of the family deals with grief differently, and how grief can be a very isolating emotion and experience. And then it goes on to show how Linda's character was in some way saved by sharing her story and finding she was not alone. There's so many people who've been touched by this epidemic. And so the film kind of continues that effort to reach out, to build community, and to get us to talk about this epidemic that really we haven't been talking a lot about.
Yeah, we haven't been talking about it. That's the problem. I mean, people just want to push it under, like I said, push it underneath the carpet, and they're just a druggie. Who cares? Their life means nothing. But that's somebody's brother or sister or father or mother or uncle or somebody. So somebody loves that person, regardless of what anybody thinks about them. I don't think we should be judging those people based upon that situation.
Absolutely. They are sick. Addiction is a disease, and it needs to be understood. We need to have education about it, and we need to have compassion for each other. How are we going to confront this? Shame is such a huge part of why people, even not long ago, people were not listing that as a source, as the cause of death in obituaries. It was like, sweep it under the rug, as you said. And that just makes it worse. Let's talk about, what did people go through? For example, during the pandemic, what kind of grief, what kind of loss, what kind of pain? How do we come out of this pandemic with a renewed sense of authentic communication with each other about our struggles? Especially young adults and kids who are, they don't have an adult brain yet, so they can't understand, or not even understand, but process the trauma of the last few years in a way that, to such a degree that a lot of kids are committing suicide. I mean, that's another epidemic that's happening. And so this conversation around addiction, the conversation around drugs and grief and loss and isolation, is really part of a larger conversation that has to do with, how do we take care of one another?
Yeah, that is a thing that we don't quite understand, and I think people that are infected by somebody that has this addiction in their family, they don't know what to do. I mean, if you look at it, people want to get help for them, but if the person doesn't want to get help, it's not going to do you any good. It's just going to basically put them through it. They're going to go through it just to please somebody, but they don't want to change. So you have that aspect. You can't force somebody to do that unless they physically go to jail or get arrested for it. And if they do want it, sometimes insurance doesn't cover it. And the other thing is, if insurance doesn't cover it, sometimes it's $10,000 to $20,000 that nobody has. So it's a real problem because we really don't have a solution for this.
Yeah. And it's a problem, like you just illustrated, that there is the intersection of so many different realms, right? There is the economic realm, just in terms of who can afford to get well, who can afford to survive this, and who falls into homelessness, and who falls into crime. How how do we level the playing field in terms of access to care? Um, how do we value people's lives according to where they live, what race they are? I mean, there's a lot that comes together in talking about this pandemic. Even the fact that, you know, I consider it the greatest crime of the century. What pharmaceutical companies got away with. I mean, lying outright. They are responsible, to my mind, in large part, for the fact that there are so many people now addicted to opiates, which literally change the construction, the chemical makeup of your brain. You know, you are wired to uh, crave uh, um, opioids after you've been exposed to them, and they were marketed for pain, and people were told that they were not addictive. I mean, if that is not the biggest drug dealing swindle crime, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
That needs to be addressed. Corporate greed.
Well, I got two questions to this, and I guess this is how I'm going to put it. First of all, did you have an idea about that, what you just said, before you did the movie? And then the second part of that is, I had this horrible feeling in my gut that when people were on these opioids for a long period of time, what does it do to our body if they do happen to not overdose and pass away? Is this going to be some type of things that we're going to have that's going to impact our ability to pass it on to our children, have birth defects, more autism, more like things like cystic fibrosis or something, because of what we do to our body to what we do to our children? Is this going to be a bigger problem than we're thinking of right now? What's your idea of that?
Well, let me answer the first question first. I did not know the extent to which the pharmaceutical companies lied, outright criminal behavior in terms of manipulation and lying to the American public, uh, without a care in the world as to the cost that it would have. And there's a very good series on, I think it's Netflix or Amazon, Dope Sick. I don't know if you've seen any of it, but
I have.
it goes into real detail about exactly how this went down. And I think everybody should see that because it's a really important American story. And unfortunately, it's not the first story of its kind. I mean, there is a history of that in this country. So again, when we talk about the war on drugs, it's like, well, which drugs are you talking about, right? I mean, the ones that are legal, the ones that are illegal. Why are some legal? Why are some illegal? Someone's getting very, very, very rich. I mean, a lot of people, and the Sacklers are now, paying for it, thank goodness. But they're the biggest, drug mafia gang in the world. In terms of the second question, I am not a scientist or an expert on opiates, and what they do to your body. There are lots of resources that people can go to find much more expert advice than I have. But from what I understand, yes, children can definitely be born with an addiction to what their mother was taking, and that is something that's happening all over the place.
Yeah, and it's a really bad pandemic too. I mean, we see so many kids that are born to being dope sick when the moment that they're born, and they go into these withdrawals, and it's a horrible horrible thing to watch. I know a couple of people that actually had that happen to them, and nobody knew that they were on drugs. So I'm not going to say who they were, but I've seen
Wow.
it happen, and it's terrible.
Wow.
Now, here's another question. As we were talking about earlier, sometimes you got to come home and desensitize yourself. Playing in a movie like this that is powerful, it's emotional, and I'm sure you put your entire emotions and body into this. How hard was it for you to relax when you came home?
It was it was not easy. But what was kind of what was startling was that we were shooting the film. We shot it right before the pandemic in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and sort of a semi-rural part of the state. And there were so many people that I met, extras on the shoot, the women who cleaned in the hotel, um, who were in recovery, who had had members of their family die. I felt like I was telling the story of so many people in that community, and so there was a way in which I was like, this isn't about me. I'm going to channel this stuff. I'm going to use this stuff. I'm going to tell this story for that reason, um, and trust that this pain that I'm feeling, playing this character, is it's fictional, it's imagined, right? It's what I call on as an actor to portray this character, but the fact that these people are actually living it, I was very aware of that. I was very aware that this was a part I was playing, and not that this wasn't my life. So that gave me a lot of gratitude, and I kept reminding myself, hey, you can come home and shake this off, but some people can't.
So tell everybody your particular character on this and what made you want to play the character.
I play Linda Latterman, who's Danny's mother and Tito's wife, who wrote Life After You, What Your Death from Drugs Leaves Behind. She was a nurse, she still is. So she had, experience in the medical field, which makes this story all the more sort of um, horrifying, perhaps, that it's not like she didn't know about drug use, and she had open communication, she thought, with her son. you know um, she's a woman who is incredibly strong, um, quite angry about what happened, and on a mission to um, to help whoever will listen. And what drew me to her was that kind of ferocious mission. Um, I felt like so galvanized by it. I felt like there was no way to turn that down. Like, if I can, as an actor, use my platform to tell that kind of story, with that kind of urgency, um, then I'm honored to do so. You know.
Absolutely.
Um, Sorry about that. And it was also, Charlene, the journalist. I had never met her before. She called me out of the blue, and she was so on fire. It was, when you meet someone and you're like, oh, wow, this person is going to do this thing. They don't know how to do it, and it will be done. Like, that kind of vision about making this film. And I admired her, uh, the risk she took, calling me out of nowhere. Um, and again, I just found it impossible to say no to both Charlene and Linda.
Hey, that's a good reason for it. I mean, if you have if you see their passion for it, it's obviously gonna like get into whatever they're doing too, which will make it even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this movie comes out April 5th, I believe. Tell everybody where they can see the movie. I think it's only digital right now. Am I not mistaken that?
It is digital. It's going to be on basically uh, it's going to be in 100% of the households because it's going to be on iTunes, Apple TV, pay-per-view, basically all of the rental places you can rent movies on your cable box. It will be available. And also on airplanes, apparently we're going to be showing there and in hotels. So yeah, it'll
A
be
final,
ubiquitous.
final question about the movie. What do you hope people take away from it when they watch it?
It's a really good question. I hope people, especially young people, take from it, tell an adult, well, you know what? I even second guess myself on that because it's really sad because in this story, a young person did tell an adult, and that adult didn't give the kid good advice. And I feel like as adults, we're letting kids down. Um, uh, I would say to especially young people, you are not alone. When it comes to something like heroin or any kind of drug you're buying on the street, know that you are risking your life when you take it because of the presence of fentanyl. Educate yourself on that. And if there is an adult you trust, go to them, come to us. We are here for you. And adults, try to keep your hearts open. And also, if you feel that there is something going on with your kid, trust that gut instinct and do whatever you need to keep them safe.
Agree, totally. So, one other thing before we go, how can people follow you, see you? Do you have any social media? Do you have a website that you have? And I'd love for you to be able to tell anybody anything that you got coming up too.
So my Instagram account is my name, all lowercase, Florencia underscore Lozano. And you can message me there. And I am coming out in a new Netflix series. I think it's going to come out this summer, and it's called Keep Breathing. It's a survival story. It's really fun, and I think it's going to be quite beautiful. So yeah, catch me there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me. It was so good to see you again. I mean, I miss you on television. I miss sitting there with my mom watching you guys act in One Life to Live. But I'm glad that you're still doing this. I'm so glad you're still in movies and television and everything else. So I'll definitely check you out there. And I had a great time. I hope you did too.
I had a great time, Emma. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Oh, you're so welcome. And unfortunately, guys, we're running out of time. We got to pay bills, so I got to go take a quick commercial break. We'll be back in about 2. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back after that.
Like, OMG, you were on TV and junk.